into 25 different places online. All right, we're live. And today we're talking about how to stop overthinking to sing freely. So you are talking to the queen of overthinking, or I should say, I am a recovering overthinker, as I think many of you probably are, or you might not even be recovering. You might be like just a massive overthinker. And when it comes to singing, what we know, guys, is that the body can't do what the brain is sabotaging. I say this all the time. I'm going to fix my screen here. Okay. I say this all the time with the singers in our intensive program, with the workshops that I do. It is the number one fundamental idea, understanding, philosophy that everything that I teach singers is based upon. That your body can't do what your brain is sabotaging. It just can't. And any athlete will tell you that, right? I mean, they understand that the mind body connection is super important. But if we recognize that we are just like overthinkers in general, in any aspect of our lives, that when we get into our life with our music, with our voice, whether it's our technique practice, whether it's repertoire, whether it's being on stage, auditions, performing, recording, all of that spin of the mind, of being in the head, is even more detrimental because your body's just reacting to it. As you know, I mean, if you follow me, if you follow my content, we talk about this all the time, like ad nauseum. So what do we do about it? How do we stop overthinking and sing freely? And so I've got two things that I want to bring to you today so that you can roll these ideas around and start playing with this in your own practice. So the first thing that I just want to remind you is that the body is always in the present moment. The mind wants to go into that spin of the past, of shaming you about the past, of what you sang the last time that didn't sound good, or the last audition you went to where you messed it up, or whatever it is. The mind wants to go to the past, or the mind wants to go to the future. Tripping out about how's it going to go this time? Am I going to be able to make it? Am I going to get the part? Am I going to, all the things that we worry about. The body, though, is only ever in the present moment. Your physical body, until we invent time travel, can only be here now. So one of the things that I find that's a really good practice when you feel like you are in the spin of your mind, and you guys know what I mean by that, right? When like you're overthinking and it's in the moment of thinking and you're singing and you're literally everywhere but here. And you're like, you know, the lyrics and the story and the worried about the high note and is my breath support here and all the things that pull you out of that, right? So one of the best things you can learn to do is some tactics to bring your body back into the present moment. So one of the things I love for that, seems simple, but it actually works quite well, is to take your toes and to press your toes into the floor. So you're standing and you're doing your technique exercises, or you're in an audition and you start to realize that like you don't feel like you're grounded at all, that you're all in the spin of your head, is to be able to have that moment where you just press your toes into the floor. And now your focus and your intention and your attention is back in the moment of your body. You're not spinning on the high note of whether you're going to get it or not, or whether you're going to make it to the end of the phrase, or what the auditioners think of you, or the girl who sang before you who was so good, who now you're comparing yourself to. Now you're thinking about your feet and your energy, and you're grounding your energy, bringing yourself back to the moment of your body. So one thing is good. Press your toes into the floor. And you can do that while you sing. And by the way, that's also really good for your breath support, because what do we know about support is that the support we want to exist down, not up. Okay, so that's something that's really centering to bring you back into the moment of the body. The other thing to bring back the moment of the body, let's say it's not while you're singing, but right before. Let's say you're spinning and you're overthinking when you're practicing or before an audition or something, which is one hand on heart center, one hand on belly, right? So this is something that those of you who maybe practice yoga or other kinds of meditation work, heart chakra, root chakra, otherwise known as like Mula Bandha, down there. Heart and belly, close your eyes. Feel your heartbeat and focus on your heartbeat. And then focus on. So you're going to do 7 counts of an inhale. And then you're going to hold for 4. And then you're going to exhale on 8. So you just want the exhale to be longer than the inhale. This is good for really settling parasympathetic nervous system, which is where your fight or flight lives, which is what's happening generally when you're overthinking. You overthink yourself into fight or flight without even realizing it. So hand on heart space, hand on belly, close eyes. Maybe you don't have to, but I like to. And so you do 7 counts in. So and then you're going to hold for 4. And then you're going to exhale on 8. And then you do it again. In for 7, hold for 4, 8. And I just did it once and I'm not in a particular spin right now, but even just doing it once, I'm like, oh, I want to keep doing that. That feels really good. Okay. So these are just 2 very straightforward ways of being able to come back to the moment of the body, get out of the spin of the mind, come back to the present moment. Now, here's something else that's less of like an actual physical tactic to bring you back into the body, like the toes and the breath work, but an idea, an intention that works amazingly well when you set the intention to employ it. So this weekend, some of you know, my daughter, who's 10 years old, was in their school musical, and they did Matilda the musical. And she was Matilda. Very proud mama. Anyway, so I'm watching, every night they did 5 performances over the weekend, and I was there at every one. And I'm watching these kids. They're 5th graders and 6th graders. And, they were like so perfectly imperfect, right? Because they're not super trained, it's school's musical, right? And they're out there, and some of them are off pitch, and some of them are flubbing their choreography, and some of them are, but the show was so phenomenal. And here's why. Because they were playing. Because they're kids. And they haven't been taught how to hyperanalyze yet. They're just still young enough that they're not thinking about how everybody's judging them, and they're not judging themselves. And that's really, guys, where the overthinking comes from, is because we want to get everything right, and we don't want to mess up, and we're worried about what everybody thinks of us, and we're worried about what we're going to be, how we're going to be judged, and we're worried that we're going to fail, and that the failure is going to have ramifications, because if we don't do well in this show, or if we don't do well in this audition, or whatever it is, then there's like this domino effect of, then how am I ever going to XYZ, which means that I'm never going to succeed, and I'm going to lose what I have, or I'm not going to get what I want. And like these 10-year-olds, they're not doing that, because they still understand, and they still have that childlike idea of play. And when they're just playing, they're not concerned. You ever watched kids play? You ever watched kids on stage? Like, they're not self-conscious. They're just like doing the thing. And so the idea of, to get out of your head and to stop overthinking so that you can sing freely, is to bring back this idea of play, of this idea of curiosity and play, just like when you were a kid. And when you're 10 years old, when you're playing around, whether you're on stage, whatever you're doing, there's that lack of self-consciousness that we have when we're little, that as we grow up, we lose. And then we care so much, and we're worried so much. And that's where all the overthinking starts to come in. So to really start to cultivate an idea of play. So for those who are in my intensive training program, like when we're in studio class together, and one of them is working on a new exercise, let's say in the technique training, and they'll always hear me say, all right, can we play with that? Can we play with that again? Like even in my language, in inviting that idea of play. Let's just play with the exercise so that when you guys are even doing your technique practice, I think so many of you get into all this overthinking because you're just like, okay, there's the this and there's the that and my ribs and my pelvic floor and my soft palate and all these things, which like, yes, we want to be aware and cultivate the techniques in these things, but it's brought with so much like doing and overthinking rather than how can I play with my support today? I don't know. Let me see. Okay. So I'm gonna play me, me, ma. Oh, let me see how to. Okay, that feels pretty good. Let me see how I can play with this a little bit more so that it maybe feels a little bit more um whatever it may be that you're working on, gooey in your support. Okay, I'm gonna play with that. Me, me, ma. Okay, now I'm playing with gooiness. I like how that feels. Do you notice how the idea of play brings this idea of experimentation, of curiosity? There's no attachment to an outcome. We get into all the overthinking because we're so attached to the outcome versus approaching this with the idea of play, the idea of curiosity of how could I play with this? How could this feel? So, when we're talking about getting out of your head, how to stop overthinking, these two things that I brought to you today are so helpful. Cultivating the idea of play, curiosity, and coming back to the moment of my body to ground me in that moment. And so you can do it kind of in the order, right? If you notice that you're really overthinking, if you notice that you're spinning out, first come back to the moment of your body, maybe feel your toes, do the breathing, and then ask yourself that question. Whatever it is that you're doing, if it's an audition, if you're just in the middle of practice, if you're songwriting, whatever it is, come back to the moment of your body, then ask yourself, how would I do this if I was just playing with it? What would it feel like to just play with this phrase? Let me play with my breath here. Let me get curious. And then it pulls you back into that moment rather than forcing an outcome, which just causes you to overthink even more. And so I'm looking at some of you who are in the chat. Yeah, Sapphire, it totally helps with panic attacks. Like absolutely. It's good for that. The breathing for sure, the grounding, like absolutely. And so I want to just invite you guys to experiment with this stuff because not only if we're in our head, then we don't have full access of the technique that we understand otherwise in our body, but also it's just not as enjoyable. It sucks to be in that spin of the overthinking all the time. And most of you have so much talent and so much desire with your singing because you love it. And we want it to be joyful. We want it to be fun. So cultivate play, cultivate fun, and explore that energy and doing your exercises with that energy. Go into an audition and instead of being like, oh my God, how am I going to impress these people? I got to get everything right. I don't want to embarrass myself. Instead, just be like, how can I play with this audition? How can I play with this song today? It just like massively takes the pressure off, massively allows you to tap into that devil may care that all these kids that I watched this weekend, and it was like such a phenomenal performance. We were so engaged. Like, was it perfect? No, half of them were, missing it up and messing choreography, but overall, it was so enjoyable and so delightful. And they did such a fantastic job because they just stayed in that the whole time. And we loved it. And so, audiences, guys, that's what they really connect to. They really don't care if it's not perfect. What they care about is, are you playing? Are you having fun? Are you a joy to watch? I'm telling you guys, audiences will forgive anything if that's how the performer shows up. So, my invitation to you this week is to play with play and curiosity and centering when you need it. All right, guys, have a phenomenal rest of your week. And if you're watching this in the replay and you have some comments or you have some questions about how this might work in your own body when you notice when you tend to overthink, let me know in the chat and I'll give you some suggestions. Okay, everybody, have a great rest of your day. Bye.